the heart of Atlanta, where tradition, faith, and modern life intermingle, a shocking tale unfolded that would forever scar the community. The rise and fall of Pastor Isaac, a man admired for his devout commitment to God, and Sandra, the woman he loved despite her secret. What began as a promise of purity and hope culminated on a wedding night that turned into an unthinkable tragedy. Pastor Isaac was born into a world defined by faith and perseverance. Raised in a modest neighborhood in Atlanta, his early years were steeped in the comforting routines of church life. His father, a respected preacher, was not only a spiritual guide, but also a role model whose life centered on selflessness and devotion. From the moment Isaac could walk, the church was his second home, and he absorbed the lessons of compassion, humility, and unwavering dedication to God. As he matured, Isaac dedicated himself to studying the Scriptures. Early mornings were spent in prayer and reflection, nights in quiet contemplation of the divine word. Every sermon he delivered, every prayer he offered, was a reaffirmation of his belief in living a life that honored God. In his heart, he carried a sacred promise: to remain pure until marriage. This vow was more than a personal commitment. It was a covenant between him and the Almighty, symbolizing his faith and determination to honor the teachings he held dear. Yet, behind his calm demeanor lay an aching loneliness. Isaac had long dreamt of a partner who would share his journey, a woman whose love would complete the spiritual and emotional void in his life. His heart, so full of devotion, quietly yearned for the connection that only true love could bring. Late at night, in whispered prayers, he would ask for guidance, for a sign that his long-suppressed desire for companionship was about to be fulfilled. Despite the accolades from his congregation and the admiration of many, Isaac felt isolated in his personal life. Every day, as he ministered to the needs of others, in the vibrant tapestry of Atlanta's community life, Sandra was a radiant presence whose beauty and grace belied the struggles of her past. Known for her gentle manner and compassionate spirit, she had dedicated much of her time to volunteering, offering a kind word, a warm smile, and a helping hand to those in need. Despite facing her own internal battles, Sandra's light shone brightly, drawing people into her orbit and inspiring hope wherever she went. It was at a charity event hosted by Pastor Isaac's church that fate intervened. The community center buzzed with activity as volunteers distributed food and provided care to the less fortunate. Among the crowd, Sandra moved with quiet dignity, her eyes reflecting a deep empathy for those around her. Every gesture, every kind word she spoke, reinforced the image of a woman who had mastered the art of compassion. Isaac, present to lend his support to the event, noticed Sandra immediately. There was something captivating about her, a natural elegance combined with a sincere kindness that resonated with him on a profound level. In a place usually filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, Isaac's heart skipped a beat at the sight of this woman, whose spirit seemed to embody everything he longed for. Their first conversation was marked by simplicity and genuine warmth. Isaac approached Sandra with a humble smile, and they exchanged words about the event and their shared commitment to helping others. Despite the brevity of their encounter, an undeniable connection was forged. It was as if the meeting of two souls, long separated by circumstance, had finally become inevitable. In the days that followed, the paths of Isaac and Sandra continued to cross. Sandra attended several of Isaac's sermons, often sitting in the front pew, absorbing every word with a quiet intensity that did not go unnoticed. After each service, they would exchange brief greetings, their eyes speaking volumes about the growing bond between them. Their conversations, though simple, laid the foundation for a relationship that would soon blossom into love. Outside the confines of the church, their connection deepened. In the vibrant tapestry of Atlanta's community life, Sandra was a radiant presence whose beauty in the walks in the local parks, shared meals at small diners, and quiet evenings discussing dreams and hopes brought them closer together. Isaac found himself captivated not only by Sandra's external beauty, but by the kindness and resilience that shone through every act of hers. For Sandra, every moment with Isaac felt like a fragile hope, an opportunity to believe that perhaps love could overcome the secrets of her past. As their relationship grew, so did the whispers in the community. Friends and fellow parishioners marveled at the couple's compatibility, remarking on how perfectly their lives seemed to intertwine. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic romance, Sandra harbored a secret that weighed heavily on her heart. Her identity was not as simple as it appeared. A truth about her past and her body that she had concealed from the world threatened to disrupt the delicate balance they had achieved. Despite the internal conflict that plagued her, Sandra allowed herself to revel in the beauty of their connection. Every shared smile and every tender touch was a reminder of the love she had found. A love that was both a gift and a source of unbearable tension. She longed to tell Isaac everything, to share the entirety of who she was, but the fear of losing him kept her silent. The secret was a constant companion, lurking in the recesses of her mind, even as love blossomed around her. In those moments when they were alone, as the city of Atlanta buzzed quietly outside, Sandra's thoughts turned to the future. She imagined a life built on honesty, where every truth could be embraced without fear. Yet, the reality was far more complicated. The possibility of rejection, the fear of shattering the precious connection they had built, silenced her voice. Each day, she wrestled with the desire to confess and the terror of what that confession might bring. Despite the internal turmoil, the love between Isaac and Sandra grew stronger. Their relationship was a delicate dance of hope and hesitation, a careful balance between the joy of newfound love and the shadow of a secret that threatened to upend it all. In every whispered word and every lingering gaze, walks in the local parks, shared meals at small diners, and quiet evenings discussing dreams and hopes brought them closer together. Isaac found himself the blessings offered by family and friends, and the solemn hymns that resonated within the sacred walls, all painted a picture of unity, love, and divine favor. It was a moment when every soul in attendance believed that they were witnessing the fulfillment of destiny, a celebration of love that transcended the ordinary. After the ceremony, the celebration spilled into a grand reception. The venue, decorated with elegant linens, fresh bouquets, and soft lighting, was a testament to the joy and hope of the day. Laughter filled the air, stories were shared, and every heart rejoiced in the beauty of the moment. Isaac and Sandra moved gracefully among their guests, exchanging smiles and heartfelt words. Yet, even as the festivities reached a crescendo of happiness, an undercurrent of tension lay hidden, an unspoken reminder of the secret that threatened to upend it all. As the evening drew to a close, the couple retired to a lavish honeymoon suite. The room was set with rose petals scattered across the plush carpet, and illuminated by the gentle flicker of candlelight. It was meant to be a sanctuary, a private world where the promises made in front of hundreds could finally be celebrated in intimacy and love. For Isaac, it was the long-awaited moment of consummation, a sacred act he had postponed in deference to his lifelong vow of purity. For Sandra, it was the eve of a revelation that she had both dreaded and anticipated with every beat of her heart. Within those intimate walls, as the celebrations of the day melted away into a hushed quiet, the couple prepared to embark on the next chapter of their lives. Every soft word, every caress, was imbued with a mixture of joy and an unspoken anxiety. The beauty of the evening, the promises of love and forever, were overlaid by the dark secret that Sandra had carried for so long, a secret that would, in time, upend everything they had built together. The honeymoon suite was designed to be a cocoon of romance, a space where every detail spoke of intimacy, beauty, and a fresh start. For Isaac, it was the culmination of years spent in prayer and discipline. For Sandra, it was the stage set for a moment that she had both long dreaded and anticipated with quiet resignation. Profound emotion. The exchange of rings, gently, with soft music playing in the background, and tender words whispered in the quiet moments before sleep. Isaac's hands, trembling with both excitement and nervous reverence, reached out to hold Sandra's. Every caress was a silent promise, every glance a reflection of the deep hope he had nurtured for their future together. For him, this night was the fulfillment of a sacred vow, a promise kept, a dream realized. But beneath the surface of that carefully orchestrated romance lay Sandra's harrowing secret. As their intimacy deepened, the weight of what she had hidden grew heavier with every heartbeat. In the soft glow of the candlelight, every touch reminded her of the truth that she had desperately tried to keep at bay. The room, once filled with the promise of love, began to feel like a stage for an inevitable, tragic revelation. The moment came quietly, almost imperceptibly, as Isaac's hands encountered an absence of what he had so long expected. In the silence that followed, his eyes widened in confusion, then in dawning horror. The realization that the woman he loved was not who he had believed her to be crashed over him like a tidal wave. In that split second, the room transformed, from a haven of love to a crucible of betrayal and shock. Sandra's eyes filled with tears as she saw the disbelief and pain etched on Isaac's face. She tried to speak, to offer an explanation that might mend the fragile bond between them, but her words were lost in the torrent of emotions swirling in the room. Isaac's voice, once gentle and loving, now quivered with a mix of betrayal and fury. The sacred vow, the promise of purity that had defined his life, was being violently confronted by a truth he could not accept. In that charged moment, every minute detail, the soft rustle of fabric, the flickering shadows on the walls, became a testament to a night that would forever change both of their lives. The hope and tenderness of the earlier hours were replaced by a storm of anger and disbelief. It was as if time itself had fractured, leaving behind a moment of irreversible change. The ensuing moments remain etched in memory. What should have been a tender consummation turned into a nightmare, as Isaac, overwhelmed by a surge of uncontrollable rage, reached for the knife on the bedside table. The evening began gently. Actions that defied comprehension, that sacred night became a sequence of violent, irreversible events. With each of the 40 stabs, each an act of a man unable to reconcile his ideals with the cruel reality, Sandra's gentle spirit was extinguished, leaving only silence, despair, and the stark, undeniable evidence of a love betrayed beyond measure. As the final echo of that unthinkable act faded, Isaac stood alone in the dim room, surrounded by the unalterable consequences of a moment when love and fear collided in the most tragic of ways. The honeymoon suite, once a promise of new beginnings, was now a permanent scar, a chilling reminder of how the weight of secrets and the ferocity of rage could transform even the holiest of nights into a scene of horror. The shift from tender intimacy to violent chaos was as sudden as it was devastating. In the wake of the revelation, the room transformed from a sanctuary of love into a setting of carnage. Isaac's inner turmoil, which had been carefully restrained by years of discipline and devotion, exploded in an eruption of fury. The sacred promise he had guarded all his life crumbled beneath the weight of a truth he found unbearable. In a blur of motion driven by an uncontrollable mixture of betrayal, confusion, and raw emotion, Isaac's trembling hand reached out and seized the knife. A ceremonial blade meant for simple rituals, now perverted into a tool of destruction. The first blow was quick, an instinctive act born of shock. The shock quickly gave way to a fevered pace, as, one by one, each of the 40 strikes was delivered with a precision that belied the chaos of his thoughts. The atmosphere in the suite grew suffocating as the gravity of each action sank in. Every strike was a brutal punctuation, a horrifying answer to the betrayal Isaac felt. Sandra, whose love had once been the light in his life, now lay incapacitated by pain and disbelief. With each thrust, the room absorbed more of the unspoken agony, until the once celebratory space was stained with the irreversible consequences of a man's darkest moment. Even as Isaac's rage seemed to momentarily subside, the silence that followed was no relief. It was a silence laden with regret, despair, and the crushing realization that nothing could undo the horror that had been wrought. In a series of actions that defied comprehension, the knife, once a symbol of hope and ritual, now lay abandoned on the floor, a stark emblem of the irreversible act. In that chilling aftermath, the room bore witness to a moment that would haunt Isaac for the rest of his days, a moment when love was consumed by hate, and a promise of purity was defiled in the most tragic of ways. For what followed, time itself seemed to falter. Isaac, overcome with shock, could only stare at the scene before him. His mind whirled with questions and remorse, a torrent of emotions that left him numb, his spirit shattered by the realization of what had transpired. The sanctity of that night was forever lost, replaced by a dark memory that would cast long shadows over the remainder of his life. In the harrowing wake of the violent act, the silence that followed was as profound as it was terrifying. The honeymoon suite, once a private haven of dreams and promises, was now a grim tableau of broken lives and shattered innocence. Isaac, reeling from the magnitude of his own actions, found himself sinking to the cold floor, his hands still trembling with the shock of what had transpired. Before long, the sounds of the outside world, sirens, footsteps, urgent voices, broke through the oppressive silence. Neighbors, alerted by a scream and the chaotic sounds from the suite, had called the police. The arrival of law enforcement marked the beginning of an investigation that would soon uncover the grim reality of that tragic night. As officers combed through the scene, gathering evidence and trying to piece together the sequence of events, Isaac could only offer disjointed explanations. His once revered image had been replaced by that of a man broken by his own rage. The evidence was clear: a knife stained with the unmistakable marks of violence, a bed draped in the tragic evidence of 40 brutal wounds, and a man who could no longer deny the irreversible consequences of his actions. The community, once united in faith and hope, was left reeling. News of the incident spread quickly through the tight-knit neighborhoods of Atlanta, igniting shock, disbelief, and an outpouring of sorrow. Friends and parishioners struggled to reconcile the image of Pastor Isaac, the beloved spiritual guide, with the monstrous act he had committed. The fallout rippled through the church and beyond, shaking the very foundation of a community that had once taken solace in his words. The knife, once a symbol of hope and ritual, now lay abandoned on the floor, a stark emblem of the irreversible act.